In the heart of a grand kingdom stood a magnificent palace adorned with golden pillars and shimmering chandeliers. King Weir, wise, powerful, and revered by his people, ruled with an iron hand. His empire stretched far and wide, and he possessed more wealth than he could ever spend in a lifetime. Yet, despite his glory, an unshakable fear haunted him. Every night he lay awake staring at the ceiling, troubled by the same thoughts. What is the meaning of life? Why are we born only to die? What happens after death? He called upon the greatest scholars, philosophers, and priests from every corner of his land. They debated, quoted scriptures, and offered complex theories. Some spoke of heaven and hell, others of reincarnation, and some simply admitted that the answer was unknowable. But none of them gave him peace. One evening, as he sat alone in his chamber, he whispered to himself, "If the wisest men in my kingdom cannot answer this, I must seek the answer beyond these walls." Thus, the king made a decision that would change his life forever. The next morning, before sunrise, King Weir removed his royal attire and dressed in the simple robes of a traveler. He left behind his guards and luxury, taking only one trusted servant with him. For years, he journeyed across distant lands. He climbed high mountains, crossed scorching deserts, and sailed across vast oceans, meeting monks, saints, and hermits. Some told him that life was an illusion, like a dream that fades upon waking. Others said that one must surrender to destiny and stop asking questions. Some advised him to seek pleasure, as life was fleeting and meant to be enjoyed. But none of these answers satisfied his soul. His heart remained restless. One day, while passing through a small village, an old woman overheard his question. She smiled and said, "If you truly seek the meaning of life, climb the great mountain. There atop the highest peak lies a hermit who knows the answer to everything." With renewed hope, the king set off towards the great mountain. After weeks of climbing steep, rocky paths, King Weir finally reached the peak of the great mountain. There he saw a humble wooden hut surrounded by nothing but sky and silence. An old hermit sat outside, cross-legged, his face calm like a still lake. His beard was long and white, and his eyes held the depth of 1,000 stories. The king, exhausted from his journey, fell to his knees. "Wise one, I have traveled the world in search of an answer. Tell me, what is the meaning of life?" The hermit did not speak. Instead, he smiled, stood up, and walked into his hut. Moments later, he returned with a small wooden bowl filled with water. He held it out and said, "Look into this bowl." The king peered inside. At first, he saw only his reflection. But as the wind blew, ripples formed, distorting the image. "Life is like this water," the hermit said. "It reflects what is inside you. When you are restless, the truth is unclear. But when you are still, everything becomes clear. Stop searching outside. The answer has always been within you." The king was stunned. After years of searching, he realized that the greatest wisdom had been within his own heart all along. For hours, the king sat in deep thought, absorbing the hermit's words. Slowly, he began to understand his fear of death had blinded him to the beauty of life itself. He had been so consumed with searching for answers that he had forgotten to live. The hermit spoke once more. "Do not waste time fearing death. Instead, make every moment of life meaningful. The purpose of life is not to seek answers, but to experience and embrace every moment with love, kindness, and understanding." Tears welled up in the king's eyes. He bowed deeply before the hermit and whispered, "Thank you." At that moment, he felt lighter than ever before. The burden of his fears had vanished. The king returned to his palace, but he was no longer the same man. He ruled wisely, not out of fear, but with deep understanding. He treated his people with kindness and fairness, teaching them to live in the present rather than worrying about the future. Under his rule, the kingdom flourished like never before. His people noticed a new glow on his face, a peace they had never seen before. When asked what had changed him, the king simply smiled and said, "I found the answer not in the world, but within myself." Moral of the story: the greatest answers in life are not found in books, temples, or distant lands. They are found within us when we quiet our minds, open our hearts, and embrace the present moment.